And it's draft season is finally here, and I'm delighted to be joined for the third year in a row by Mr. Shane P. Hallam. Right, so I'll run you through some quick fire names if you want to hit me back your view of them. We obviously can't have a draft pod without talking about my favourite prospect in this draft, and that is the unicorn himself, and Kyle Hamilton. As soon as I watched him at the bye week, Shane, I've not been able to look anywhere else. I think that's the first time I've ever kind of had sort of high views on a prospect. What do you make of Hamilton and his? Is he truly unique? Is he Sean Taylor 2.0 or have you got doubts?
That was my comp as a prospect. Him, I think he's similar to Sean Taylor as a prospect, where Hamilton maybe didn't work out quite as well as expected. Notre Dame, kind of a slower track for pro days. I think we saw on film, like, he's big and he can move really well for his size. You can play him in so many different positions, but I think with that requisite size, if you let him freelance, if you have a defense that allows him to do what his instincts say, he's going to be phenomenal. He's going to be able to play that run really well. Like Troy Polamalu, let him come up to the line of scrimmage, let him run backwards. Let him take coverage and play the middle of the field. There's a lot that Kyle Hamilton could do. Yeah, he's definitely, for me, I think a top 3 player in this class. And I think he could fall a little bit. Safety, not a premium position. Teams could be worried a little bit about exactly, if he fits their scheme and system. I think teams that are a little more hesitant on what they do might not take him, and I think it could end up being a steal. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. Yeah,
I mean, ideally you get an edge rusher or an alignment, and he's there at 13, but it kind of feels like he might not fall that far. Another guy who in this mock draft that I ran through with 32 other people, it was George Karlaftis was sitting there at 13, and I kind of have a little bit worry actually that 13 might be kind of almost not a dead spot unless somebody takes one of the quarterbacks above, and you might not necessarily get those top 6 or 7 roughly speaking kind of upper tier guys, and then you've kind of got a sort of smaller second tier, and then a lengthy maybe 40 player plus kind of tertiary tier. But what do you think about that 13 spot, and would Karlaftis be a fit?
I think that 13 spot is tough. When you get to the middle of that draft, things get a little more difficult, where I think teams will start kind of drafting guys that we may not view as, well, great players, or maybe could have went late first, early second. I think Karlaftis fits in there. I think he's going to be one of those wild cards on draft night of where he goes. I think there's some teams that are going to really, really like him. Consistent production from day one, but he is a player with how Purdue used him a lot of times in the wide 9, a lot of times standing up and rushing. I think he'll be kind of more favored for some of those 3-4 defenses that give that kind of front than teams with just a pure, 4-3. And I think that could be part of the issue and could cause him to fall. I probably had him falling in this mock. I had him falling down pretty far to 29. It feels a little late. But I think, I wonder, because I feel like after him that there's a tier drop off of those edge rushers, especially with David Jaba's injury. So I do wonder if maybe it pushes them up. If you're at 13, you're Houston, maybe we gotta take the hit and do it. So we'll see.
Yeah. And in this scenario, I had the Texans trading back into the first round at 31st overall with Cincy to take Nakobe Dean. I know he's undersized, so there's a potentially falls. I would highly doubt he's there at 31. But what do you think of Nakobe Dean again, running through all the Georgia prospects tonight?
There are definitely games where Nakobe Dean is the big impact player on that defense, and he's another guy that, though undersized, I think he is definitely athletic enough to play that middle linebacker role, be able to make a lot of tackles, but also is really good in coverage against tight ends. I mean, there's some red zone plays that he made that are just eye-popping, running with guys that should be faster than him, that are bigger than him, and he's getting physical with them. That's the kind of linebacker I like. So he's another whose value I think's a wide range. There are going to be teams say, we don't want a linebacker that's small. Right, it's the Tyler Linderbaum thing. Like, that doesn't fit our scheme. He's not off our board. I think there are teams probably like the Texans that feel like, hey, we could take this guy. He's really athletic. he, shows up on film. There's definitely a fear when you have the best defensive line in football in front of you, what that does for a linebacker and how easy it makes your job. But I think you run through the interview process, you make sure that he was the one that was doing a lot of the calling of the plays. It seemed like I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah. No, definitely. And in terms of this draft, Shane, who are your guys? I know last year we were listening back. You said you've always got a few. Who are your kind of guys that you might be higher on, or just guys that you were sold on pretty quickly watching the tape?
I mean, one of the big ones who's starting to get a lot of buzz is Christian Watson, the receiver from North Dakota State, who was my number 6 in this class. I wrote an article in early January where I thought his career trajectory would be similar to Cooper Kupp, would come in, have a good first year, and really explode in a couple of years as an older FCS prospect. I mean, 6'4", 208, 4.3 speed. It shows up on film. You can use them in so many different ways. People are scared of the production. I think he's going to be a stud. He's, like I said, my number 6 receiver, and I would take him in the first round pretty easily. So I'm a really big fan of him. He's someone. An edge rusher, a player that I like talent-wise is Sam Williams from Mississippi. Okay, yeah. Really productive in the SEC. Was leading the SEC in sacks for a while. Has some off-field concerns that might push him down, but I think he could end up being a steal talent-wise at that spot. Can be kind of a stand-up linebacker in a 3-4. I think he could put his hand down. He kind of did both a little bit Mississippi. So I really like him. He's definitely someone that I'm higher on. I'd be willing to take second, third round if everything checks out off the field for sure. And then I'll give you one more. A corner is Martin Emerson.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
If you're running a zone scheme, I think Martin Emerson, man, he could be phenomenal. Like ball hawk, really good instincts. There are times, games where they weren't thrown at him, and he was covering the best receiver on the field in some of these SEC schools. I just think he is underrated, but has like size, speed, combo, and some really good awareness and ball skills. I want to see where he goes for sure.
Yeah. No, it's funny you said that. I actually just watched a couple of games of Mississippi last couple of weeks. I wanted to see what Charles Cross first of all, just to kind of does it check out, and yeah, he's one of these guys. It's so smooth, he kind of does. But yeah, Emerson definitely was one of the names that I wrote down. I also seen him go by MJ Emerson or some sort of kind of 2-letter first name. So be one of those guys that throws off your board when you're trying to check them against others because you can't find the name. Happens every year with the different spellings, etc. But in terms of sort of any sort of kind of shocks or anything you think are going to surprise people, I know you kind of get sort of general group think, and people seem to have a consensus mostly through the national media in terms of what's going to happen on draft night. Is there any kind of shocks you could see, or any kind of theories you've got how it might pan out in day 1 and 2?
Look, like I said before, I think the quarterbacks are going to fall. I don't think any of them are going to go in the top 15. I think that'll surprise some people. We're going to get some buzz. Someone's going at 2, someone's going at 6. Yeah. I don't think it happens. I think that will be pretty surprising. Ultimately, I think we could see a lot of safeties maybe go off the board late. Like obviously Kyle Hamilton's going to go high, but I think Lewis Seen from Georgia could be a first round pick. Daxton Hill from Michigan, I think, sneaks his way in there. So when you get to that late first range, sometimes teams are like just taking round 2 guys that they want that 5th-year option on, and safety's off in a position where they want to kind of breed that. So I think that's interesting. I think that's probably the big stuff. I think in terms of guys that fall, I think I do think the linebackers might fall a little bit. That's why I've had Nakobe Dean in the 2nd round. I just think teams are going to look at other positions and other needs and have that. Like one of the problems with this draft is there's too many players for spots. Like we're going to sit there in round 3 and round 4 and say, man, how's that guy still on the board? But no one was taken. Maybe only 1 or 2 guys were taken. And you're like, wow, why did they go there? I think that's going to be surprising if you haven't really looked at this draft.
Yeah. No, definitely. And can you see the undrafted class given a fair bit of making a fair number of rosters then, just with the sheer depth, just because teams are be stocking up on picks, but then teams also don't want to have too many picks as well. I know Caserio's kind of said he thinks he'll take between 8 and 10 players, even though we've got more picks than that right now. But you think the undrafted class could turn up a few gems?
I I think it's going to be great. I've said it before. I think they're going to be undrafted players that are better than fourth round picks from last year. I think we're going to see a lot of players from last year cut for undrafted seventh rounders. It's the nature of the depth, like you said, of this class. So we already started seeing a little bit last year. I just think this is a good draft to have a lot of picks, or be able to give those free agent contracts and give some big money. I think this is the year to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of the sort of kind of Texans needs on the offensive side of the ball, interior O-line, I think, is certainly one of them. If it's not Icky at the top of the draft, who are some kind of names that people should be looking for that can, hopefully step in and to a role at guard or center and play in that sort of kind of power gap scheme?
Yeah, I think there's a couple I really like day two, even late day two, for players that can play there. One guy I really like is Dylan Parham from Memphis, who went to the Senior Bowl, played a little bit of center, but can, obviously played most of his time at guard. He's just a really nasty player. I like him in the power gap, even though maybe you'd want 5 more pounds or so on him. But, he holds his upper body weight. He's really strong upper body, can move things around. So I think he's a guy to look for in terms of that. I also like kind of a versatile piece that could be good late in the draft. At center is Luke Fortner from Kentucky.
Yeah, like he's, him. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. I think if you're looking for a pure center, you're sitting there round 4, round 5. I think he's a player you could take. Maybe sit year 1, let him develop. I think he could develop into someone who ultimately can be a starting center in the NFL. Really good lower body push. You can really see him use his legs to his advantage. So I like him too. And then I'll mention one more kind of late round guy that I'm high on is William Dunkel, or Bill Dunkel, out of San Diego State. Just, highest rated PFF blocker, the run blocker this year. And I mean, he's not fast, he's not athletic, but he will knock you down and he'll keep pushing you down. Like, this dude's just nasty. He's so good at getting his hands inside and just moving guys. So if you can find a way to kind of fine tune his pass blocking enough, I mean, I think he could end up being a third day steal.
Yeah, no, I like Fortner. I was watching, originally I was studying Josh Pascal, and then I just tried to watch a bit of it just to get a feel for Wan'Dale Robinson, just to kind of see where he was kind of sitting. And then, Fortner just stood out. And I almost thought there was some games where he was better than Darian Kinnard. I know they've kind of projected him to be a guard, potentially, at the next level. And he was kind of early mock drafts, Kinnard was in there. And then you've kind of seen his name be overtaken by the Phileles and the Rymans and all this kind of stuff. But certainly... Fortner, I thought, is just exactly what you said, Shane. Just the anchor and the base at the point of attack was just something that stood out on tape, and just solid, And I think there's a lot to be said for offensive linemen you don't notice because they just do their job so well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes that is worth a lot more. Sometimes you'll see some of these big school offensive linemen, and I'm like, man, they never really impressed me, but I never wrote their name down as being awful, and they get drafted 3rd round. Yep. It happens so often, they turn into good players. So I think it's worth keeping an eye out for.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of I know we kind of touched on some, but the wide receiver, I think, the takes could go a number of ways. I suppose it's pick your flavor, but if you were to kind of obviously you got the get up and go guys at the point of attack, and you've got the speed demons, but any kind of wide receivers you think would be a good fit, or maybe some guys that you've kind of watched a bit more of than you've seen in the consensus?
I actually like a really good fit for Houston would be Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama.
Okay, yeah.
Really, really productive guy. I think he can profile more as a starting receiver. Makes a lot of good contested catches. He's not super fast, but they run him on a lot of 9 routes, and he gets separation at the line. So I think he's really intriguing. Who may fall, late round 2 into round 3, but be a player who ends up outproducing that. So I think if you want more of that contested catcher, he's a good player. I also like round 3, round 4, Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee, who had a great combine. I mean, he seems like a speed guy, but when you watch him play, he has those long strides, kind of Chase Claypool-like, where these Tennessee receivers, they're never used right, but like you see it on film that he has this skill set. And sometimes I think those are the players to go attack. 6', 204, who just wasn't used correctly. So he's going to fall a little further than he should if he would have been on a different team. I like that. And then maybe a later round pick that I like a lot is Eric Ezukanma from Texas Tech.
Yeah, okay,
yeah. He was productive early in the season, kind of fell off a little bit, had a couple injuries, but man, I mean, he's someone that's super quick and another guy that just gets separation, but has the body to kind of box you out in the red zone. I think he's someone that could outproduce his draft stock. Day 3 he'll probably go and could be a good player.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as we touched on earlier, in terms of the desperate need for investment, despite picking up Marlon Mack last week, is an investment at the tailback spot. And what do you think of the running back class as a whole? Is there any kind of names, beyond the sort of Walkers, Breece Hall and Spiller, the kind of consensus kind of top 3? Is there any kind of guys you like in that sort of next tier, if you like?
I think it's a deep group. Maybe we don't have that high end running back, but I think Breece Hall's pretty darn good. I really like Pierre Strong Jr., running back out of South Dakota State. If you've watched him, he's 5'11", 207. Good pass catchers, solid blocker. They didn't ask him to do either very much, but I mean, there's some plays where he just explodes off the snap, one cut, go, and man, makes big plays, big yardage, makes guys miss in space. I think I recently moved him up to my number 5 running back in this class. I think round 3, round 4, he could go and be pretty productive. But I think there are some bigger backs that are going to go early from the SEC. Zamir White from Georgia, Brian Robinson from Alabama, probably as day 2 players that you could bring in. Robinson, more of the plotting, bigger running back who showcased some explosion. I think he's going to go day 2. And then Zamir White was a high-end recruit, really athletic, tore both his ACLs in 2 consecutive years. And I mean, it's come back, been productive for Georgia. They always use those platoon running backs to never get a great sense of workhorse load, but I think he has that ability. And then one late round guy that I like is Jashaun Corbin from Florida State. Might get drafted, might not get drafted. But I think if you want to add some depth, he could be a 7th round pick, probably be a free agent. Started at Texas A&M, got beat out by Isaiah Spiller, went to Florida State. Florida State's offensive line is woeful, but he was making space, creating space by himself, catching the football a ton. I think he's an underrated player in this class.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the tight end, I know obviously the tight end position's changed a lot, and most of them are just soup top wide receivers. But in terms of an actual blocking threat that can hold his own at the point of attack, who would you say is a kind of top few true tight ends that can actually hold up at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I think there are a couple good 2-way guys. Jelani Woods from Virginia is really intriguing, because he's massive, 6'7", 259. When he was at Oklahoma State, I mean, they used him as just a blocking tight end, was really excellent at that. And Virginia, they try to use that size to their advantage. He's still raw there, but I mean, I think he can block and develop into something more. I really like Charlie Kohler from Iowa State, who was pretty highly touted coming in. Used a lot more as a blocker as they had some offensive line problems this season. Showcased he could do it, but has some pretty good athleticism. And then Daniel Bellinger from San Diego State barely ran routes, but tested at the combine as one of the best athletes at tight end, so very firm blocker, uses his feet really well, especially in pass protection. And then I think you do have some pass catching upside. So I think all 3 of those guys, blockers first, but there's some upside for all 3 of them to turn into something more.